Good day, everyone, and welcome to our Pro Training Technical Webinar. Our original speaker, Matt Remen, is unavailable, so Sean Mullen will be presenting. He will discuss how to strengthen your margins while delivering greater value to your customers with the latest pest management innovations and market insights for 2026. But before we start, I'd like to review a few items to help you participate in today's event. Here's a quick review of what you'll see on your screen. To the left of your screen is the viewer where you see the presentation. To the right is the control panel where you can ask questions. The control panel will collapse automatically when not in use. To keep it open, click the View menu and uncheck Auto Hide Control Panel. You have joined this webinar in listen-only mode, which means you are muted. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions by typing your questions into the pane of the control panel. You may submit your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will address them during the Q&A session at the end. Please note that we may not be able to answer all questions due to time constraints, but we will do our best to cover as many as possible. Later today, you will receive a follow-up email containing the recording of this webinar for your reference. With that, let me go ahead and introduce you to today's speaker. Sean is an entomologist and the key account manager for the Envu US mosquito management business. He has extensive expertise across all facets of pest management. In his current role, Sean helps customers eliminate the disruption mosquitoes cause to everyday life. Previously, he has held several roles within Bayer Environmental Science and the Crop Science Division of Bayer. These included Customer Engagement Training Manager, Global GIC Product and Marketing Manager in Lyon, France, Northeast Territory Manager, General Insect Control Specialty Actives Marketing Manager, and Eastern Regional Sales Manager. Sean also held several roles for Western Pest Services, including QA and Training Manager, where he led a mid-sized pest control operation in New Jersey. With that, Sean, the floor is yours.
Oh, perfect. Well, first I'm going to say good morning or good afternoon, depending where you're at. But today's topic will be talking about gross margins and how to improve your top line. I will give a little background on Envu. Some people still aren't quite sure because we used to be Bayer and then we moved over to Envu. Talk about market trends, what's happening in the market, just to make sure you know what you're aware of. We'll focus on growth opportunities and where you can make a little extra money, which is always nice. And we'll talk about the products that will help you get there. First of all, basically, who is Envu and where are we going? Envu, we were spun off from Bayer Crop, and that happened several years ago. Now, Envu, most people just don't understand what the name is, but it's actually a combination of two words, and it's environmental view. So, and that really speaks volumes to where we're going. Ever since we broke away from Bayer, we now have the ability to develop our own products, which we have. Look at products and see how we can improve them a lot quicker. We're looking at opportunities and bringing new products over to the United States. And we're also looking at mergers and acquisitions because I'll mention a little bit later that we recently acquired both FMC and InCare. So being away from Bayer has given us a lot of freedom to operate. And that's been really important to us because it's this way we can bring solutions and value to you. Kind of looking at what we do, and when I'm talking about solutions and value, Envu right now is committed to this industry. We right now do over 7% of our sales go back into research and development, basically bringing new things to you. We're a US-based company based out in North Carolina, but around our office in Mooresville, we have a formulation lab where we have dedicated scientists really just looking at new formulations, new chemistries, what we can bring to the market. Same time, we have a research facility in Clayton, North Carolina, which is a 260-acre farm with insect rearing labs, a home built for termites, basically to teach people how to treat for termites, We have a golf course actually there because we do herbicides and fungicides. So it's an extensive facility only dedicated for research. And if anyone has been in this business for quite a long time, there's a product called Seven that was basically 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is the site where actually that product was developed. So that's really how far this research farm goes. Envu itself is dedicated to pest control. We have 2 regions, an east and west. We have 17 dedicated area reps. So, and this part of this is from the acquisition of GS FMC. So we have a lot of people out there to serve you. That's really where I'm going at. One thing to show you kind of how the evolution of, and not just Envu, but most major manufacturers, we have a long history of acquisitions. Envu itself really started out as Celanese, which was a pharmaceutical, and it was quite common for pharmaceuticals to have crop divisions. It has the crop division invented a product, say corn or soybean. They always look for what other opportunity can we move this product into, and typically it was pest control or landscape or golf courses. So we were always kind of an auxiliary market, but the products they developed back then were very broad scale. So they treated a lot of different pests. Going forward, those pharmaceutical companies are spinning their crop off. Same time, the crop companies are no longer investing a lot of money in pesticides or broad spectrum. They're going very specific. So in the case of us with Bayer, they spun us off because really there was no much of a future for us to bring new products out. So they decided we no longer fit their business model. But as you can see, this is a very common history for companies like Envu. Acquisitions have been key. Within the last year, we acquired FMC, and we also acquired InCare. This is not going to be the only acquisitions we have. We're constantly looking for bringing new companies in, what fits, and where we can put them. And I'm sure you're already familiar with FMC products like Tallstar and Scion. Those are pretty much the familiar ones. We also have a very, very broad spectrum of fungicides and herbicides, both within Envu and now including all what we call the GSS, which is FMC. InCare was a more recent acquisition that happened around March. Technically, InCare is still a standalone company. It will be actually become part of Envu in 2026. Right now, they have a lot of research going on in Africa, and they're tied in with the United Nations and a WHO. So those contracts are in place. So they're part of our company, only in name at the moment. So it'll become official probably within about 2 or 3 months. Now we're seeing something interesting in the market, and this is something that probably affects all of us. Number one, we're seeing a lot more crossover businesses. And what I mean by that is a few years ago, you saw the rise of the mosquito companies, and they were solely dedicated towards mosquito business. But now those mosquito companies are moving into traditional pest control and landscape. Same thing, landscape operators or the major landscape companies are now looking into pest control and vice versa. So we're seeing kind of a blend in the industries right now where landscape used to be separate from pest control. The companies are all now starting to fight for the same customers. So that is a trend that's going on right now. We're also seeing these companies offering a lot more different add-ons, and everyone's looking to keep everything within their own realm. So they're going to offer landscape, they're going to have pest control, they'll offer mosquito, they'll offer tick. So they're trying to keep everything together right now. So, and that's an ongoing trend. We're also seeing that private equity, and they've been strong for a while, or companies buying companies, but that's just increasing. It's not going away. We're also seeing new distributors and manufacturers. And what I mean by new distributors, a lot of the crop distributors are now slowly saying, well, maybe I can do something in pest control, or some of the landscape distributors. But you're also finding out that unlike Veseris, they're not bringing a lot of support. All they're saying is like, hey, I've got the product too, but they're not there really to help you if you have a problem or any other issues. Other trends coming are regulatory. There's a big focus now on endangered species. And this is actually being driven by Fish and Game, not quite EPA, but it is affecting what EPA does. I'll take Indiana, for example. It could be Indiana or Illinois. I may be wrong on this one, but they now restrict you when you can spray mosquitoes. You can't treat until, for example, April 15th, and you're not allowed to do any treatments after October. So laws are slowly changing. So that's something you need to be aware of that's going on out there. But really, kind of the major trends are service businesses are crossing over. You're seeing different players coming into the market and coming out of the market. And you got to be careful with the EPA because the laws are changing. And if you're not up on what's going on, we need to be careful. Let me put it that way. So let's take a little bit closer look at your business and the challenges you're up at. Coming from a pest control company, my job was quality control. It was all about driving and generating profit, business, good service. And one of the things I always like to remember people is that good service generates new business, new profit. So always focus on delivering the best service you can. Understand that people may not be home all the time. So you need to constantly remind them of what's going on. One thing as simple as anything else, if you have a Ring camera, make sure you're visible. When you stop at the house, if no one's there, ring that. Don't just do the service and go away. You want to make sure they see you. Make sure you communicate with the customer. Text them, either pre-visit or post-visit. Let them know that you're there and what you did. If you have the ability, send them an image. If you see something or some problems, take a picture of it and send it to them. One of the most impressive things I had was years ago was that I brought my car in to a dealership, just for general maintenance. All of a sudden, next thing is a text like, "Hey, I'm noticing some wear and tear on your tire. You may want to think about this." The fact that they reached out to me rather quickly, A, it was an upsell, but B, the fact that they're using digital was very, very nice. So try to communicate to your customers as much as you can, keeping in mind that if you're doing good service, your customers like you, they're more willing to buy an additional service from you. And better coming from you selling that than going to your competition, because then you become vulnerable. So that's one thing to keep in mind. What else can you do? I always like to talk about revenue because it's your bottom line. Understand that you give good service that's out there. So don't always want to give something away free. It basically costs you time and money to do something. Be prideful. Basically say, "Hey, I'm good at what I do, and this is the value that I bring. So stay with, so this is why you hired me." This is once again that visibility part. Let them remember you. Another thing to do is kind of think about your return per hour, and really is how much money are you making every day? And this is all going down to your margins. You can increase your return per hour or return per day by adding additional services. Mosquitoes, could be ticks. You can do annual inspections. And case in point, the company I worked with, our termite guy was typically busy from early March to September, or maybe October. In the winter, we'd never wanted to get rid of them. So we would use them and schedule them as an annual inspection. And his main job was to go out and check for termites, but at the same time, get into people's homes and see what other services they can generate. Do they have mice? Do they have book lice? Whatever it was. The reason they were going out there was A, double check on the service we did, but B, is there something else we can do for it? So we use that technician as an additional salesperson. There's a way to generate additional revenue. We are also sticklers on routing. We were firm believers that the tighter the route, the more money we could make. And our company's goal, and it was not always the easiest, we wanted 7 hours a day of generating revenue. And that came back from not having a lot of callbacks, and also leaving time for travel. So the goal was, let's maximize every hour of the day making profitable service. Because you don't make money driving from point A to point B. So the tighter the route, the better you are. May not be feasible for everyone, But we made it a habit that every other month we looked at routing to make sure that as new jobs came on or jobs were lost, how do we make each route as efficient as we can? And it's really important if you're trying to drive your business is that efficiency. And I'm just going to kind of, sorry, this is the mathematician in me, but thinking about good routing, you know, every service we did, if it was just a routine service, we had a dollar value on it. And I'm just making up numbers, so just keep it at that. And we, for example, did each service we did, for example, was $75. So if we try to do at least 2 services per hour, we were generating $150 an hour of billable revenue. But if we were able to have very tight routing and do 2.5, that came up to 187 for every hour. And the difference between the 2 services, the 2.5, that was a 25% increase in revenue every day. That's a nice increase. Now let's take it even further today. If you can add on a tick service or a mosquito service and tag, let's say you put 3 on, including during your normal services, and you're charging about $50 extra service for those services, you just actually increase yourself another 15% of revenue. So for one day's work, by just having some add-ons and keeping your routing tight, you could potentially, for example, do 40% in extra revenue. I mean, think about what it costs you to take a new job and you're putting an add-on. So you're making a lot more money doing the same thing. And really, that was one of our philosophies, and the company I worked for was extremely profitable. Now, talking add-on services, they are not new. We've always done some type of add-on service. Termites, for example, usually never included in a regular service contract. Because typically, if you're using Centricon or if you're doing a traditional termite job, you're charging extra for it. And that work has always been kept, for the most part, separate. 20 years ago, bed bugs came on the scene. Now, these are the guys that have not been seen from 1960s, all of a sudden started popping back in the late 80s and the 90s. And I'll be honest, my territory, I was a salesperson at the time, was New York City, and that was ground zero for bed bugs. And the first year, I can tell you, no pest control person wanted to even touch bed bugs because it was an unfamiliar service. Well, times have changed, and I guarantee you all know how to do bed bugs now. But back then, when people just threw some bait out for denicides or cockroach bait, that was a service. You know, they weren't used to having to dig in and get the sprayer out and spray every crack and crevice. But bed bugs were also an extra service. So you built on that. Companies got into encapsulating crawl spaces, gutter cleaning, deck cleaning. All these were add-on services. The company I also worked for way back when, deck cleaning was one of our first expansions. And we had an established customer base. We sent out mailers. And I'll be honest, we used our termite guy, once again, when he wasn't doing termite work, to clean decks. It was a great way to add a little extra revenue and keep a guy busy. Mosquito services, they've been around for about 15 years, but ever since COVID hit, people want their backyard. And you think about it, people want to be outside, they want to travel, they want to have a barbecue, they don't want to get eaten up by mosquitoes. In my house, years ago, my kids were mosquito magnets. If they were outside, within 5 minutes, they'd be getting hit. I'm the opposite. Some people don't get bothered at all, so I wouldn't get touched at all, but everybody else is torn up. But also during COVID, we had the rise of the mosquito companies, and they were dedicated. And quite honestly, they built a business model of focusing strictly on mosquitoes, and it worked. There was a high demand for mosquito work. New things coming are ticks. Now, tick work has always been done. But 20 years ago, we didn't have the number of species and the diversity and the spread of where they are now. Years ago, the Lone Star tick was centrally out around Colorado in the Midwest. Now it's found everywhere in the United States. New diseases are popping up. So once again, it means new opportunity because diseases make the news. People get concerned. They're going to ask you questions about it. And last thing of add-on service, it's been around for a long time, is stinging insects or brown marmorated stink bugs or ladybugs. A lot of people do this one time. This is a one-shot deal. I'll do that. Just going to recommend always take advantage if you're doing a yellow jacket's nest or anything else like that. Always offer them a yearly contract on top of it. Basically cover for everything else. You're already at the house. You're already going to be doing a job. They're going to see the work. You're going to do it. Use that. Quickly point out there are regional differences and regional opportunities. To me, the Northwest, it's carpenter ants, it's stinging insects, it's ticks. Take the Southeast, you're dealing with a lot more large colony ants. You're dealing a lot more spiders. So look at where you're at, what's the opportunity, and can I turn that into something that's an additional service or an add-on because the work you're doing. I will say most likely mosquito and ticks are probably the easiest. You can do add-ons. Stinging insects, just an opportunity to expand into an annual contract. Same thing with occasional vaders. And depending on your area, spiders or possibly even scorpions, there's a few companies out around the Great Lakes or the Thousand Islands up in New York. They only do spider work. And one company I thought was pretty cool actually does spider work on a boat that visits vacation homes on islands. And they'll just do spider work because spiders are so prevalent there. So it's not just limited to tick and mosquitoes where I'm coming from. There's opportunity, but think about where you're at and where you can grow that business. But like I said, two of the easiest ones are ticks and mosquitoes right now. I live in New Jersey. This just happened that someone died because of alpha gamma syndrome, and that is from the Lone Star tick, which 10 years ago was not in the state. It made the person become allergic to red meat. So if you like a steak, this is probably your biggest nightmare. The man actually had some beef 2 days in a row. He felt sick day one, didn't think about it. Day two, more severe allergy. He actually died from it. So there's a lot of things that are popping up. And I'll be honest, the government is starting to notice. In the U.S. Senate in Virginia, a senator named Kathy Hagan died because of a tick-borne illness. And because of that, the United States Congress passed a bill that increased funding in tick work. It told the EPA to start increasing funding and fast-track anything revolving around ticks. Your typical mosquito districts right now are being told that they now have to start looking at and monitoring tick work. The more this exposure of monitoring and more information on the news, consumers are going to start wondering, should I get tick work? And to me, it's an opportunity for you. Lyme disease has been around. I have a household where my wife, my kids, my mother-in-law all had Lyme disease. My wife had Lyme disease back in 1980, and she was one of the first cases. And she also ended up with tuberculosis. So tick diseases are nasty. And a lot of the areas, especially in the Northeast, everyone knows someone who's had a tick disease. Something always to have that conversation with your customers. Ticks are everywhere, especially in the fringe areas where the grassy areas are out there. If you live in my area, you see deer everywhere, and it's just crazy. But the problem is that with the deer come the ticks. But at the same time, you have to take a step back and understand tick biology. Most ticks live about 2 years. And the early nymphal stages and the larvae stages are pretty much the ones that are more likely to carry a tick-borne disease. These the larvae in the nymphal stage, feed on rodents, chipmunks, mice, rats, squirrels. They're around every home that's out there. It's not just about the deer. The squirrels, the chipmunks bring the ticks close to the home where you're at. So this is justifying an add-on service. The way I'm looking at it is that you're really out there trying to control what's around that house. And ticks tend in the summer months to quest, so they're up high. They can drop off the animals and just move in. So there's always that ebb and flow of ticks within a yard. So doing just an average perimeter treatment may necessarily not do it. You're going to have to do extra work. One of the things I recommend in a tick program, and a lot of this I base out of some studies out of Rutgers, is that in the super early spring, a product like DeltaGuard granular, and the reason I'm pointing out DeltaGuard, I mean, A, yes, it's my product, but B, it's the carriers, a very mid-range carrier. So it tends to sit in the middle of the leaf matter. Some sand-based carriers will drop too low. Other ones will stay on top. The ticks in the colder months will actually kind of stay in as the leaf matter decomposes. It keeps them warm. But as you get a good day, warm day, cold day, they move up and down. So you want something to sit in the middle to catch them going back and forth. Do that early in spring. If you eliminate everything around the general area, give a good application, you may get anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks of control. But then you reinforce that. By May or late April, you want to do a perimeter treatment. And I'm going to say right now, depending how you set up your service, if you do monthly service or if you do quarterly service, I always recommend a product like Polyzone, which is rain fast, or Scion, which is resistant to UV light. Those products have been built to last 75 to 90 days. So if you're doing a quarterly service, you want to use a product like a Polyzone or Scion. If you're doing a monthly treatment, opposite, you can do something like a Tolstar, which is bifenthrin. Bifenthrin, good all-around product, but around day 30, it slowly starts to break down. So depending on your service, I'll recommend different products for different time, for whatever length you service. In the summer, once again, do 2 to 3 perimeter treatments again. Break it up. It's going to depend. The further south you are, you'll do 3 treatments. The further north you are, it's going to be 2. And once again, in the late fall, I'm going to tell you, probably around November when the leaves fall, if they're around the property, treat DeltaGuard again. So what you're doing is you're eliminating the ticks around that property, because ticks reinvade areas rather slowly. They're very linear up and down. So they have to be carried into an area to repopulate, and that takes time. So if you can eliminate them around the perimeter of a home, you're really going to reduce the populations and the likelihood of anything happening. So what you're doing is you're just knocking them down is what the goal of your tick program, but never guarantee disease elimination, because you can't guarantee that a dog can't bring a tick in or anything else. The other consideration is mosquitoes. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is always my crystal ball. It's not much of a crystal ball, but so many companies are offering mosquito work out there, the landscapers, the mosquito companies. So if you don't do mosquito work, someone else is going to offer that. And if they offer that, they have a way to get into your customer. Basically you steal it. Most of the calls are coming from nuisance biting. But bottom line, mosquitoes are probably the most deadly thing on the planet. They outweigh us, and humans in war kill quite a few people, but mosquitoes are worse. What's driving your business is not so much the disease, even though that they'll hear about it on the news. It's really people getting bit around their yard. They want good service when you're looking at mosquito control. My understanding that a few callbacks for mosquitoes for a certain customer, they're going to start looking elsewhere. So you got to make sure you're doing a good job all the time when you're out there. We've talked about there's a lot of diseases, no surprise. Outside New York City, they had their first case of chikungunya. That's where the baby's born with a small head. The diseases are spreading. Dengue is throughout the South right now. So, but once again, the driving factor is going to be nuisance. And keep in mind, offering an additional $50 of service to do mosquito work is nothing. Think about how much these customers spend on tiki torches, citronella candles, outdoor traps, foggers, those Raid 20-foot foggers. They run to Home Depot and they'll probably spend $30, $40, $50 blinking their eyes, and they still get no results. So offering a mosquito control program for $50 plus a month is really only going to benefit you. Keep in mind who's biting. If people are complaining getting bit during the daytime, it's 80s. 80 is your Asian tiger mosquito. Very aggressive biters, but also understand that this is a mosquito that uses multiple breeding sites and can breed in an area as small as 2 tablespoons of water. That means if a tree has a little knothole that's holding water, they're breeding in it. And in 2 weeks, you got a new generation. So when you're treating for Aedes, for example, you really got to make sure you're hitting everything. Both Culex and Anopheles, these are more dust fighters. These tend to be up high, 15, 20 feet up in the tree canopy. So if you're using a backpack sprayer, for example, to do any work or planning on doing any work for mosquitoes, you got to go high. And this is where your customer says, what time of day are you getting bit is going to dictate what is the best treatment option for me. And there's a lot of different business models you can use. We have InCare. So if someone's eco-friendly, you can use InCare stations. And for example, we have a new product called Barricor Essential Mosquito Control, and it's a 25B product, no signal word. And believe it or not, on the label it says will not harm bees. It's designed for mosquitoes. It is not designed for larger insects. You can do more integrated services, and InCare gives it an extra level of security of preventing that callback. This is something you got to think about because you don't want to lose that customer to someone else. And then you can break your treatment up either to 2 to 3 times a year. And that's, once again, I'll recommend a Polyzone or a Scion. Or you can do it monthly, which is kind of the model that a lot of companies do. And you can use something like a Tall Star. Or the option is if you want to just simply use liquids, you can do that too. But I will warn you, it's easy to miss something. We have one of our training videos where we actually put litmus paper that picks up water. And we challenge people to go with backpack sprayers to treat shrubbery around a building. And we hid these little papers all throughout the plants. After every treatment, not one person hit that litmus paper because they never got the material far enough into that bush or that shrub. So keep in mind, adding that extra level of security helps your customers. But if you are doing a liquid only, I'm going to recommend a backpack sprayer. But make sure you get it deep into the bushes and try to hit everything there. So don't do it in a 5-minute spray. You got to take your time and try to focus on everything that's out there. I've got this, and this will be part of the video, that when you build a program, it's very reasonable when you start, when you don't. Pick and choose your products based solely on your service schedule. So if it's monthly, I always still recommend starting off with something like a Polyzone, get that long-term 90-day barrier in place first. Then you can go down to something like a Tall Star for what I'll call reinforcement sprays. So you can kind of pick and choose. Glad to have the discussion further down the road. We do have InCare, and I know time is limited, but this is a new acquisition that we've had. InCare is a station, and I'll be honest, it is the only mosquito station on the market. What makes it different than everything else is that the mosquito becomes your pest control operator for you. The owner of the company originally invented this product when he noticed that when a bumblebee flies or a honeybee flies, they produce a negative charge or positive charge. On this mesh is a slightly negative charge. So when that mosquito lands on that, the charges interact and the material are biocide and the fungicide attached to the mosquito. It is a fungicide, so it takes 10 days to kill. So within that time, the mosquito is meant, especially Aedes, to go to that 30, 40 different breeding sites around a property. And Aedes, for example, doesn't go more than 300 feet. And it'll contaminate all those breeding sites for you. So this is that added level of security that if I can't hit everything, I can feel a lot more comfortable with something that will get to those areas that I may or may not have missed. So that's really been the principle of InCare, and it's really a nice reoccurring service model. You charge for it, say $50. Make sure that price includes the satchel refill. The station will last 5 years, so that could be a one-time charge. So you can break it in kind of like Centricon, that it's an extra charge every month, extra revenue for you. So it's a pretty good product. I've actually used it in my house this year for the first time. Tell you what, I saw one mosquito, and that had ended September after I picked up the stations. Each trap will go for 400 square meters, or, so 2 traps per yard is the best way to think about it. A lot of publications on it. Barricor Essential Mosquito Control is new this year. It is essential oils. One thing when you're blending essential oils, they're not all created equal. And what I mean by that, for example, if you add thyme oil with clove oil, it actually will mimic an organophosphate and attack those sites on an insect. So how you blend it makes a difference. The blend itself, there is a sweet spot. If you add too much oil or too less or mix it different, it either become a repellent or may not work. We found out actually with this product, it works better at the lower rate than it does at the higher rate. It's what we call the sweet spot. Label itself kills mosquitoes. It is safe on bees, and we've had outside third-party companies do direct sprays on bees, sprays on flowers. Did not kill them. It is safe for outdoor food handling areas. You can apply it around docks. It's water-based, so easy to mix. Quite effective, and it smells like cinnamon, so that's always a plus. We know it works well. The bees have been pretty impressive study. We're now doing it on butterflies, and right now, everything we've done, it's safe on butterflies, and this is important because the monarch butterflies are an endangered species. People don't want you treating around them. So we're about to get this put on the label. Very important for us. One thing about it, this product does not have a signal word and nothing on the SDS either, and that is because of the refined oils. Not every 25B oil acts the same way, and what I mean by that is, for example, you'll see that we have cinnamon oil on our label. You can go to another label and see cinnamon oil, and you'll see a danger on it, on the SDS. That is because it's refined and where it comes from on a cinnamon plant. Refinement also means it's costs a little bit extra, but not that much. But the quality of the product makes a difference in when you start looking at the label words and the signal words. We even have sesame oil in it, but it's been refined that it's non-allergenic. So these are the claims that we can make, and we're comfortable making them because of the quality of ingredients we put into it. It does make quite the difference. Cool formulation, doesn't separate. It's really hard on any type of separation where we know some of our competitors do separate. So you can keep it in your truck, you can keep it in the tank, and just your normal driving around will keep it in solution. I'll kind of go through that, but the rate's 2 ounces at a time. And two final things, benpolyzone's been around for a while. I always like to remind people it's rain fast. What does that mean? Is like when you treat, say, vegetation on the outside or the siding, it forms kind of what we call a lattice and holds the material on it, almost like a spider web holding it on there. So it slowly breaks out. Time release is the way, kind of one way to look at it. But you can get heavy downpours, it's going to stay there. So other products easily wash off because they're not being held there. So, and if you think about a leaf, for example, it's got a waxy coating. Anything put on there, if it's not being held there, you're going to lose most of it, which means you're going to have breaks in your treatment. And the final product is Scion. This is one of the products we gained from FMC. It has UVX technology, doesn't break down in sunlight. So think about that in Arizona, for example, scorpion work. You've got a product that can take full sunlight, not going to break down, where most other products, once that sun starts beating on them, you start losing that product just because by nature products degrade. And I think at this point, I'll leave it open for questions. If Chris is around.
I'm here. Thanks, Sean. That was some great information, and we appreciate your time today speaking to us. Let me go and check to see what questions have come in so far. The first one is asking, what is a product that doesn't affect bees and smells like cinnamon? I'm trying to write the name down.
Well, I always kind of think of Einstein for myself, but I personally call it BEMC, MC square, but it's Barricor Essential Mosquito Control.
Perfect. All right, this next question's asking, with the InCare mosquito station starting at over 300, needing 2 to 3 per home, what rough dollar amount are you starting a mosquito service for one customer?
It depends, what your return per hour is, but as an add-on, I would go at least $50 extra per month. And that will cover the cost of the refills, your time. And the station is a one-time charge, so you may want to do your first charge and say charge 75 or 100 and pay for the stations.
Okay, the next
Hopefully that helped.
Yeah. The next question's asking, how much extra per home do you think I can make by adding either a tick or mosquito service?
Good question. I was going to say size of the yard, but to say a typical average home, just call it a split or a colonial. I think adding on to your additional service, once again, I think you're looking at anywhere between 30 to 70, depending on the size of the yard. With tick work, because you're using granulars, that's going to take a little bit longer. So you may want to probably go 50 plus. Mosquito work, once again, still going to take your time, probably about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So I would still say around 50 is kind of a nice starting place.
All right, thanks, Sean. Questions are rolling in. Here's the next one asking, which of the products discussed today would you recommend for tick control?
Good question. Two favorites that I personally use is Delta Guard granular, because I use the backup to wood it. And at the same time, I've always used Spend Polyzone. And mainly because of the spreaders, it almost acts as a spreader sticker on the leaf matter, and you're treating the heavy fringe matter and organic material. So I want to make sure something's going to stay there.
Thanks, Sean. Here's another question asking, does Envu intend to continue offering InCare solely to PMPs, no retail sales?
Nope. It is strictly to, we'll bridge it and say for pest control operators and landscape operators. So the professional side of the business, yes.
Okay. Here's a question asking, have you ever seen window washing as an add-on business? It seems to be very profitable for me, seeing as carrying product spots on windows seems to be my only complaint.
I like that question. I'll be honest. I mean, it's a great add-on. I'm not going to argue with that one. Years ago, I saw one company just starting gutter cleaning, and now, my God, that company is so massive right now, and they're gutter cleaning and pest control. If opportunity is there in your neck of the woods, go for it. Basically you're a service provider, and if there's something you see, I'm never going to say don't pass it up.
Gotcha. Here's a question asking, can your Barricor EMC be used in misting systems, and if so, at what rate?
Yes, it can be used in misting system. It's already being used in it. The current rate now is 2 ounces, but I will say that our research center has just bought a misting system, and we're testing on how low we can go with that rate. So part of me is going to say stick to the label, 2 ounces, but stay tuned. We want to make sure that we guarantee if we can go lower, you're going to get those results. So we back what we say.
Very good. This next question is asking, can you help us properly quote InCare monthly without general pest service, average 2 buckets?
Time-wise, once again, you have to bill or have to set your price to what you want to make, per hour. But yeah, a lot of companies do offer InCare as a standalone. We're assuming that 2 stations on average during the service will take about 10 minutes. Let's be honest, if by the time you say hello to the customer, you get the water, you're probably looking about 20, 25 minutes for a service for 2. So whatever you want to earn per hour, kind of a good time. I'm assuming most people will say probably about 100 plus.
Okay. Let's see, the next question is asking, how can I effectively explain to homeowners why tick control should be an annual service rather than a one-time treatment? We currently offer single treatments, but I believe an annual program would provide better protection and generate more consistent revenue. What's the best way to communicate the value and necessity of year-round tick control?
Well, I'll start off with a quote. Basically, nature hates a void. So if you spray the ticks around, you kill whatever's been what they call questing sitting on there. There's no guarantee that you hit the chipmunks, the squirrels, the mice, the deer. They're always going to be reintroduced and dropped into that area. So your treatment is good for the day you do it. But if you have a zone or a squirrel or a chipmunk in that area, you got to be always vigilant. You always got to be out there and just making sure that that barrier is solid. One time is not going to do it. So my advice is you need an annual. One time's fine, especially for something like a brown dog tick where they're in a dog run. But because you're looking at deer ticks or even a Lone Star tick, which actually crawls. I don't know if anyone's aware of that, but that is one tick that actually will hunt you. It'll pick up your CO2 and move through the lawn towards you. So even if that's outside a treatment zone, it can migrate into an area where people are. So 100%, I would prefer an annual treatment for ticks.
Thanks, Sean. Now, this next question doesn't specifically ask for which treatment, but they're asking, how often would you suggest we retreat?
I'm assuming we're talking mosquitoes or even ticks. I would really just kind of base that on your service schedule. So if you're doing monthly service schedules, once a month. If you're doing quarterly, every 3 months. The only time I would say if you want to have an additional treatment is say you have an unusually heavy, say rainy month. I mean, I've seen that every once in a while where things start breaking down, where they've had 3 to 4 weeks of steady rain. You may want to think about something there, especially with your high profile, bigger customers, but try to keep within your service schedule.
Very good. Well, I'm looking and it looks like you have addressed all the questions that have come in. So folks, I just want to say thank you for attending today's webinar. Later today, you will receive a follow-up email with a short survey and the recording of today's session. So we would appreciate you sharing your feedback. On behalf of our speaker and Veseris, we sincerely thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today. Have a great rest of your day. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.